Daniel Erickson, welcome.
So glad to be here, Nick.
I have a reader question for you about what I would call sleep resilience. So I'm gonna share the question, and then I'd like to get your take on this broader topic of sleep resilience and get some of your ideas on how we can all develop more sleep resilience. So a listener asks, I've struggled with insomnia on and off for decades. My pattern is that after months or even a couple years of insomnia, I'll finally start sleeping well for a little while, but then I'll get hit by some stressful event that triggers my insomnia all over again. Last year, it was a major surgery. A few years before that, it was my divorce. Do you have any advice for breaking out of this pattern? So, I love this topic that I think is kind of under discussed in the sleep and insomnia world, which is what can we be doing if we're sleeping well? Let's say we're not in the throes of insomnia. What sort of habits, mindsets, beliefs, etc., help us to be resilient in the face of stress or stressors so that we don't fall into kind of chronic insomnia. So I'd love to just kind of have a discussion with you, Daniel, about this, but let me kick it to you first. Like, what do you think your first sort of idea or suggestion would be in response to this question?
Yeah. So I'll just kind of imagine that the reader here asked me this very question,
Hmm.
and I would say the following: that what really helps is to just understand the fundamental nature of sleep. And I think the first principle for me is that peaceful sleep, just like peace of mind, is an effortless thing. If we're not trying to sleep, we sleep really well. And anyone who's out there and wants kind of confirmation of this can ask anyone in their lives to sleep well. And we all know that person. It's our spouse or our uncle or a kid or somebody else. And we can ask them, what do you do to sleep so well? And they will reveal the secret. They will look at us with a kind of confused look and shrug and go like, I don't know," which just illustrates that they're not trying whatsoever to sleep. Sleep is effortless. Now, when we struggle with sleep, this can be so difficult to see because it appears to us as if something entirely different is happening. It appears to us that we have a kind of an affliction or a condition called insomnia, and we have to try hard to get sleep. And you know, what often happens is we try some supplement, we try some meditation tape, we try this, we try blackout curtains, we try sleep hygiene, and at some point we start sleeping more easily again. And we think, oh, I finally found the combination of things that worked, so now I'm set. I've got it for now. But what in reality happens is something different. What in reality happens is that we may take something or do something and think, oh, good, this will take care of sleep for me. So now I don't have to do anything. And it's that second part. Now I don't have to do anything. That's the magic, not the thing we did. But this again can be so difficult to see. But understanding this is so helpful because this now leads to this kind of sleep resilience topic where if the reader is in a place where they're now actually sleeping well without any struggle, what they can see is this. They can see that at this point in time, I'm actually not trying to sleep. I'm actually not doing anything to sleep. I'm not trying to force sleep. I'm actually sleeping well now, thanks to me abandoning those attempts. And if the reader says, no, that's not really true, I'm still having this habit of like, I brush my teeth exactly at 9:30 and I go to bed at exactly at 10:30 instead of that, then I would say it goes back to this what I call delegation, that you've delegated the presumed work of sleep to this habit or to whatever you're doing. It is like the more you focus on the fact that you're not sleeping and try to kind of remedy that, the more struggle you would have.
So let me sort of clarify and like reflect back what I heard. If I had to kind of sum it up, it's almost like this not getting attached to a set of protocols or effortful activities that we need to do in order to sleep well. That in fact, when you get hit by a stressor, it's the very mindset that says, I need to do a bunch of stuff in order to start sleeping better that causes you to fall back into insomnia. And that the trick is that annoying thing where people we know who are good sleepers, they're good sleepers because they don't try at all. They make all, they do everything wrong. They break all the rules and they sleep super well. So
That's
not getting attached to sleep effort seems like, if I had to sort of summarize the Daniel Erickson first principle of sleep resilience, it would be not getting attached to like sleep techniques.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, and that as well as just the logical, intellectual understanding that sleep is effortless and comes from, it happens to us by itself when we're not trying to do it. But let's go forward to this, another topic that I think will be really helpful for this reader and for the audience in general, and it's the one I alluded to, which is seeing the difference between sleep disruption and insomnia. So
Mm.
this reader clearly had what we call insomnia, has been in a multi-year struggle with sleep, and that's insomnia. But the reader also brings up like these circumstances like a divorce and other stresses, and how those kind of like kick-started a bout of insomnia for them. And I think what's so helpful to see is the following: that all of us humans, when we go through something that is stressful, like a divorce or losing our jobs or anything like that, we will not sleep well. It would be very strange if somebody said, I got fired yesterday and I'm sleeping great. We'd be like, that can't be true, unless maybe you
Right.
hated your job and it's a big
Right.
relief. But let's say it was the case that you really needed your job and it was a shock to you, you're not going to sleep well. It's entirely normal for us to be a little bit apprehensive, a little bit vigilant when something is going on in our lives, and that just leads to us sleeping a little bit less. That's completely normal. That's sleep disruption. It can come again from stress. It can come from pain. You broke a rib, you're not going to sleep well. Your neighbor
Right.
has a new dog that's loud, that's going to disrupt. There's like a million things that can disrupt sleep,
Mm.
and that itself is self-limiting. When the stressful situation is gone, when your rib has healed, then sleep just comes back, because the disruptor is no longer present. But insomnia again is this self it's a self-fulfilling loop, if you will. It's kind of like it's a loop in itself. It's like we're scared of not sleeping, and then when we sleep little we get scared, and then we are awake more, etc., etc. So what I really want to get to is this: that the reader may very well have had some typical normal sleep disruption in these events, but because they in the past have had the sleep struggle, they have been like afraid of not sleeping. So the sleep disruption now leads to this kind of like triggering of this fear, and they're like, oh no, I'm not sleeping, I gotta remedy that, I gotta do things. And now we have this insomnia that's going on. But when we understand this, we see we can have a sleep disruption without the fear of not sleeping. It becomes self-limiting and it doesn't go into insomnia. So I really wanted to clarify that.
I love that distinction between sleep disruption versus insomnia. And another, really, I think it's the same thing. It's just a different angle on the same thing, which is that something you said, which is that these stressors, they don't trigger insomnia, they trigger some sleep disruption. And then it's the fear of sleep disruption that leads to the insomnia. I think that's a really subtle but important thing, is that stress doesn't inevitably trigger insomnia, right? Like you said, it probably inevitably to some extent will trigger some sleep disruption. Like you said, it would be weird if you had some major stressful event and you didn't like lose a little sleep or have trouble sleeping. But it's that mindset of, oh no, I didn't sleep well. Now that creates that self-fulfilling prophecy that then generates the insomnia, which is a huge vulnerability for insomnia, like the opposite of resilience, right? It's this vulnerability where you treat sleep disruptions and wakefulness as threats. Then you train your brain to think of them as dangers and you get anxious about them. And it's the anxiety, right, that leads to the insomnia and perpetuates the insomnia.
Yeah, I think you said it so well. I'll just add a very common example to illustrate this, and it is menopause. If you look at
Oh.
studies of women going through menopause and ask, let's say 100 women, did this affect your sleep in some shape or form? 99% will say yes, it did affect my sleep. But if you ask, do you think you have a problem with sleep? Quote unquote only, it's a big number, but quote unquote only 30% will say, yeah, I think something is sort of wrong with my sleep.
Hmm.
But it illustrates the point that the let's say the 65% or something like that, 69%, who said, yes, I'm not sleeping well, but that's not a problem. They had sleep disruption and it will be self-limiting. But the 30% who said like there's something wrong with sleep, they are the ones who kind of may start worrying, uh, thinking of it as a threat, etc., and they may have insomnia. So I just want to, point this out. And also the hormonal question is so very common, that are hormones causing my insomnia? No,
Mm.
they like again, like so many other things, they can cause some sleep disruption, but not insomnia, because again, insomnia is all about fear and how we think about things.
It makes me think too of I used to bring this up a lot in my work with clients, but pregnancy and having a newborn are also highly disruptive of your sleep. But the vast majority of pregnant women and people with newborns, they don't have insomnia. They have a lot of sleep disruption, but they don't develop insomnia, which I actually think is it's a powerful lesson to really internalize, is that you can be incredibly resilient to major sleep disruptions. I mean, for, you know, 3 to 4 months, you're sleeping with a beach ball in your stomach, right? Like, of course, you're going to have sleep disruption, right? You got a newborn who's waking up every 2 hours to feed. Like, of course, you're going to have a lot of sleep disruption. But for the vast majority of people, that doesn't inextricably lead to insomnia, which means they are able to be resilient to a pretty profound level of sleep disruption without going into insomnia, which I just think is really an incredibly hopeful uh, message and idea, right? For all of us who want to be more resilient when it comes to our sleep in the face of stressors.
Yeah, I think that's very helpful to know. And to give you a specific example of that is like traveling or going out, getting out of town, and things of that nature. Because a lot of people are so concerned about that. Like, what if that creates insomnia? But it doesn't. It's again like, yeah, sleeping in a new environment, doing something different, being up late, it can cause maybe some disruption, but not insomnia. And that encourages us to do whatever we want, kind of live our lives freely, and that is really, really helpful.
That's great. So just to recap this, the distinction between sleep disruption versus insomnia, and that those are not the same thing. And just because you have sleep disruption doesn't inevitably mean you're going to get insomnia. Okay, so that's super helpful. What's your third kind of idea or tip for us, Daniel, on this question of sleep resilience?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for asking that. I was thinking about that just now, and it's the following. If we simplify how insomnia, the story of how insomnia happens, that will also really lend itself to us seeing how we can not fall back into insomnia as well. So this is a little bit simplified, but essentially insomnia starts this way. Something happens in our lives and we have one night where we have choppy sleep. And then we think, oh no, I had a night of choppy sleep. I have to prevent that from happening again. And now we're introducing that effort. Now we're trying to sleep, which paradoxically leads us to having a second night of choppy sleep. And then we go, oh no, I had 2 nights of choppy sleep. I have to prevent that from happening a third night. And because we're trying to prevent it, it happens the third night. And what I'm trying to illustrate here is that insomnia couldn't exist without us trying to prevent it. The prevention, the resistance is essential for the existence of insomnia. And that doesn't only apply to like when we start having insomnia for the first time, but also when we've slept well and we now have like a choppy night and we go, no, oh no, my insomnia is back. How can I prevent that? I think the key is to see this is the thought pattern that led me to have insomnia in the first place. It was my attempt to prevent it. And then we go to this place of like true resilience, which is like not trying to prevent it. Like having a choppy night after sleeping well and not doing anything about it, just seeing like, oh, I was just a little frazzled, just a little nervous. I don't need to do anything about this. I don't need to try to prevent it. And sooner rather than later, we again start sleeping well again.
This is such a interesting and I think really profound statement, what you said, that insomnia couldn't exist without us trying to prevent it. Like, it's kind of a brain teaser. Like, I had to like stop and think, like, wait, what is he saying? That's it's kind of profound, right? That our very efforts, super well intentioned and understandable efforts, because sleep disruption, not sleeping well, is brutal, right? It's awful. It really sucks to be in that place. But the our very attempts to cure it, to prevent it, are the thing that trigger it and make insomnia a thing in the first place, that keep us vulnerable to insomnia. Yeah, so powerful. Okay, so let's say someone hears that and they're like, wow, they're nodding their heads. They're like, okay, yes, like I can see in my own life how I've been doing that. But then it's interesting when the advice is a negative. It's not do this, it's don't do this. I think a lot of us, maybe it's a cultural thing, but we struggle with those negative exhortations. Like we want something positive to do. So how do you, maybe there just isn't a great answer to that. Maybe that it is, we just need to get better at being willing to not do stuff all the time. We need to get over that hang up. But like, what would you say to someone who said, again, intellectually, I get this, but I'm really struggling after a rough night of sleep, not to want to do something, right? To try and yeah, what do you say to someone like that?
Yeah, I get this question all the time, and having pondered this for years, it is still difficult for me to, as you put it, like explain a negative, if you will, explain non-doing. It's you know you have kids, so you'll probably relate to this, that sometimes you're driving and your kids are in the back seat and they're arguing with each other, fighting over something, and it starts annoying you. So sometimes I've been driving and then I'm just
No,
like,
my kids never argue or
oh
fight. Do
really? That never
your kids
happens?
argue and fight to you?
Oh my gosh, I must be something doing terrible, doing some terrible parenting, because that happens to me. And yeah, what also happens to me is I eventually I get annoyed, and and sometimes I go like, "Oh, just stop fighting, just stop fighting." And when you first hear that, it can sound like a command, like an order. I'm ordering them to do something. But reality is that if they weren't arguing with each other, there would be nothing for them to stop doing. Like if they were not arguing, there would be nothing they couldn't do, right? So the whole premise is there has to be something that we're doing for us to not do that, right? So part of the answer is just to see all the things we've been doing and see that the answer is like when we're no longer doing all these things to sleep, then we're not doing anything in particular and things will get easier for us. But on a more sort of like maybe more hopeful or inspiring or lighter note, you could also say that you can do anything. Meaning, sometimes people say like, so Daniel, is there nothing I can do to sleep easier? And then I go like, well, if the intent is not to try to force sleep or make yourself sleep, there's a million things to do. You can go whale watching or take up a new hobby or play golf or something like that, because that will just like take your attention elsewhere and make things easier for you. So you can look at it from that perspective as well. But to explain or express that non-doing is really tricky. Oh, and one more point I want to make is that a common pushback I get is like, oh, so you're saying that I shouldn't want to sleep well, Daniel? You're saying that I should just be okay with, having this choppy, crappy sleep? And the answer there is, of course, no, no, no. All of us humans want to sleep well. There's not a single human being who doesn't want to sleep well, right? But it's more of that attachment that you alluded to before. Like we can really want to sleep well, but if we have a choppy night, instead of thinking that it's like catastrophic and something that's absolutely unacceptable, we're like, yeah, I want to sleep well, and if I have a choppy night, I don't want that, but I'll be okay. I can see that I can be okay, and that leads us to like less attachment, doing less, and easier sleep.
Okay, that's exactly where I was going to go. And I think one thing I have found helpful with this dilemma is one way you can reframe this non doing or non attachment in a slightly more constructive or positive sense is it's about building confidence in the face of sleep disruption. And one way, like practical way, I think anyone can start to do this to be more confident that I will be okay despite having slept poorly is to do I often recommend people keep a accomplishments list after they don't sleep well. So if they have a crappy night's sleep, I'm not interested in how you feel after a crappy night's sleep, but keep a running list of all the stuff you do throughout the day after a crappy night's sleep. And do that for a few days, maybe even a week or two. And what you will start to see is that, yes, it feels rough not to sleep, right? It definitely feels better to get a good night's sleep. But you can still do a lot of, you can still give the big presentation at work. You can still have fun with your kids in the backyard. You can still be a supportive spouse when your partner's having a hard time with something. You can do really important things despite poor sleep. And if you just allow yourself to realize that and to pay attention to that and to focus on that, it tends to build up this sleep confidence that on a very fundamental level, it sucks, but it's okay that I didn't sleep well, which then makes it so much easier to relax into sleeping the next night instead of struggling to force yourself to sleep, which only makes it harder. So that I don't know what you think about that, Daniel, but that's something I've tried to pretty good effect with a number of clients.
No, no, that insight that I can have an okay day or even a good day after a little sleep, that has helped thousands of people, I've connected with in some shape or form, right? I know that 100% is very, very helpful. And now another like pushback that we can get when we share this is somebody saying like, yeah, for some people that may be true, but if I don't sleep enough, I feel like my world is like coming apart. I'm totally exhausted. I'm drained. I feel nauseous. I vomit. Like, things are things are really hard for me. So that's maybe not true for me, but it still is. And I want to share a really helpful thought example for anyone who's felt this way. And so let us imagine that we're taking a random person like off the street and we do an experiment. We say like, okay, we're going to keep you up all night, and then we're going to ask you how you feel tomorrow. And we do that. We don't allow them to sleep at all. And in the morning, we say, how do you feel right now? In all likelihood, this person is going to say, I feel a bit tired, sleepy, a little foggy. So that goes to your point that we're not trying to deny or downplay the fact that sleep deprivation in itself, regardless of how we think about it, it does impact how we feel. True.
Sure.
But the real insight here is what this person will not say. So the random person we kept up all night and asked them how they feel the next day, what will they not say to us? Well, they will not say, I feel a tsunami of anxiety. I feel like I can't focus. My memory is shot. Like I feel like I'm gonna throw up. I'm shaking, I'm shivering. And that illustrates to us that the often what has like the big impact the next day is not how many hours we slept, but how we think of the fact
Yeah.
that we slept little. If we think this means something is wrong with me, like this is going to be the rest of my life, then we're going to have a really rough day. But if we think I slept little, I don't want that, but it doesn't mean anything, it doesn't predict anything, it doesn't say anything about me, then we feel a little bit tired, but not more than that. So I want to share that one as well.
Okay, this has been fantastic. Where can people go to learn more about you, Daniel, and all your work?
Absolutely. So I would say head over to YouTube and just search for the Sleep Coach School, and you'll find tons of educational videos and interviews and things that can be really, really helpful.
Perfect. Thanks, Daniel.
Anytime.